Welcome back. This is the 2021 Texas All-Region 5A 6A Etudes for Oboe. This is number 5 in G major, and it's a very long etude with a lot of notes and tricky leaps in it. We're going to be focusing today on the middle section of the etude. This middle section is almost entirely in the key of E minor, and only at the very end does it quickly head back to the key of G major, the home key. Before we get into the nuts and bolts of this section, let's make sure we have the counting and the rhythms down. Now we won't count trills and we won't count grace notes in this. 1, 3, 1, 3, 4, 1. 2 and 4 and 1 pullette, 2 pullette, 3 pullette, 4 pullette, 1 and 3 and 4 and 1. 3, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Now, let's take a look at that key. The home key signature is G major. Here, we've changed to the relative minor. It has the same DNA, the same notes, but instead of going G to G, the scale goes E to E. Well, let's practice that first. Same notes as G major, starting on E. But this composition also, because it's in E minor, it has a little bit of the harmonic minor, which means D is raised to D sharp. And you'll notice at the third measure of the excerpt, that's why there's a D sharp thrown in. Now let's look at measure 17, the trill and the grace notes. We're going to trill from B to C, that's easy, and then it says B, A sharp B at the end. So we have to recognize that we're going to trill B, C, B, C, B, C, B, B flat B. B, C, B, C, B, C, B, A sharp B. It should sound like one line. Please don't trill, 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 stop, grace notes. So at many times in all region, I will hear that. The effect is this. That's not what really is intended, especially when this was written in the early 1800s. It should be one continuous line. You should practice very slowly doing them back and forth. Notice, you will always have to return to the B before you play the grace notes A sharp and B. So in measure 18, we have the G natural on top of the staff. We don't want to overplay it. It's a note that tends to blurt out and not be as good tone quality. Go easy on the volume and add some vibrato on it. Definitely keep the lip pressure down. The note tends to be a little sharp anyway. Check out the beginning of measure 19. There's a D sharp followed by a breath. It's going to be very easy to get flustered or nervous and cheat that D sharp in order to get as much of a breath as possible, like this. Many times in all region I hear that. Well, not only has the tempo been disrupted, but the D sharp was kind of cheated and treated badly. Instead, give it as much length as you can and still get a breath in. Okay, now let's look at measure 20. It looks really difficult. It's not nearly as difficult as it looks. First of all, we will count it like triplets instead of sixes. 1 pullette, 2 pullette, 3 pullette, 4 pullette. That's the first step. Now, the approach to practice should be, you've got a lot of leaps to go down, right? We have to blow down through the oboe. In other words, You're looking straight ahead, but aim your air down. We'll refer to this as voicing low. You'll voice low throughout this measure. Practice that first by slurring a few notes at a time. Another important concept is to keep the oboe very still. Don't let it move around. Don't let your fingers move it around while you play these passages. Once you're able to do those 4-note segments, start playing them consecutively with as little break as possible. Bam-ba-ee-ha, bam-ba-ee-ha, bam-ba-dee-dum. Then try slurring all of it. Then when you add the articulation, you won't have any issues. Remember, the wide leaps, prepare for them in advance by voicing downward. Your airstream normally will play this way relative to the oboe. During this measure, you will increasingly aim your air a little bit lower. Within the context of that measure, let's look at what's probably going to be the hardest for most students. The hardest leap will be the E down to the G, near the end of the bar. Practice slurring up, slurring down, with very short breaks in between. Don't take your mouth off the oboe. Notice, you're playing with the embouchure and voicing the low note at all times here. Now let's look at the E minor arpeggio in measures 21 to 22. The high E is a problem for everyone, and we all have a little bit of anxiety as we approach it. The key is to practice it a little bit every day so that you build up confidence, much like a golfer would hit a bucket of balls at the practice range to build up confidence in the swing. Let's remind ourselves of the high E fingering we're going to use. Half hole, second finger, third finger of the left hand, the first octave key in the back, and the A flat key on the left side, and the second and third finger of the right hand. The good news is we don't have to slur to that note, we just have to tongue it. Practice that arpeggio every day as part of your warm-up before you begin this etude. I made reference to the left high E. Recall that there are some cases in which you have to play the A flat key on the right side or the A flat key on the left side. This is one of the occasions that's probably going to be performed on the left side, hence the term left E. Now we come to a difficult part of the oboe's technique, the trill from A sharp to B, or B flat to B. In order to play it, first let's play high B flat, or high A sharp. Now, every trill in the oboe can be done with one finger. Here's how we're going to do it. You're going to play high B flat as before, but you need to push the A flat key down. Check to make sure the A flat key is in good operating order. Play the high B flat and wiggle that key. Nothing should happen. If you hear any wah, 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 or suddenly the note stops, you'll need to take the oboe apart and the screw that sticks up between the two joints, you'll need to tighten it about 1/12 of a turn and try again. Sometimes for oboes that haven't been adjusted in a long time, you might have to turn it as much as a quarter turn. Only turn a little bit at a time. Once the wah, wah, wah stops, the G sharp key is working. The reason why we add the G sharp key is we're keeping it down because at the end of the trill, we're going to play the real G sharp. So notice, high B flat with the G sharp key down, and we're going to move the middle finger only. So it'll sound like this. Freaky, right? You think you'd be playing high C, but you're not. You've got the G sharp key down. Now you have to think about the trill as A sharp B, A sharp B, A sharp B, A sharp. That was all done with the G sharp key down. Then regular G sharp, then go back to regular A sharp, and then the high B at the end. So it's going to start with the trill, high B flat plus the A flat key, trill the middle finger, regular G sharp, regular A sharp, high B. Now let's do it in 2 steps, the trill and then the grace notes. Trill, grace notes. Pro tip, when you do the trill, put both octave keys down. Then when you go to the G sharp grace note, you don't have to switch octave keys, it's already down. Finally, try it slowly without stopping. Both octave keys down at the beginning. You can imagine, I play this several times every day as part of my warm-up. You will too. Now let's take a look at the breath mark in measure 22. You absolutely must breathe because that's the last breath you're going to get for about 4 measures. So plan on it. Play the high E for 1 count and take 1 count to out and in. So you have plenty of gas, plenty of air for your tank for the next several measures to come. Now let's think about the octave leaps coming up in measure 23. They're tricky, right? Just like we had some voicing in the measure with the triplets where we talked about voicing down, we're going to do the same thing here. First, let's play only the low notes. Now let's play only the high notes. Now let's take each octave and with the voicing for the lower note, use that airstream for both notes of the octave leap. What I did was a very condensed version of what I will do for maybe 2 minutes a day while practicing this section of the etude. Now let's take a look at measure 24. It can be performed, of course, strictly in tempo. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. And there's nothing wrong with that. No judge is going to say anything about it. But at the area level especially, if you want to show that you're an overachiever or a very advanced student, put the tiniest bit of retard in there. It would be as if saying to the judge, hey, I'm not out of air, I can do this in an advanced way. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1. Just for those last couple of notes, the next measure would be back in the tempo. Now, what to do if you run out of air? I hear in past years, some students, they breathe at the end of 24. You really should not. If I hear a student breathe at the end of 24, that tells me that he or she did not take a deep breath back at measure 22. Plan for a large breath in 22. Don't breathe at the end of 24. Only if something goes horribly wrong would you want to interrupt measures 24 going into 25. Now let's look at the overall phrase shaping for measures 17 to 24. We'll put a little bit of a crescendo in 18, and then come back a little decrescendo during the triplets. The ascending arpeggio should naturally crescendo a little bit, and so we will stay forte and only do the decrescendo where marked. At measure 24, save the decrescendo for the last 3 or 4 notes. As I've mentioned in the previous videos, don't worry about speed. Worry about tone and play with your best reeds and your best tone at all times. The judges will remember tone if there are 2 players or 3 players who are very close together in score. I guarantee you they will talk among themselves or they will ask themselves who had the best sound, and that would be the tiebreaker. Hopefully by now you're continuing your journaling of your progress. Every day you practice this etude, write down what measures you played, what tempo or tempos you used, and a reaction statement or 2 about your progress. Did you like your progress? Were you happy? Were you frustrated? And why? Keep your journal. At the end of the all-region process, you can look back with some satisfaction and pride over the progress you made going into the all-region auditions. This is the end of part 3.